There's something about the Australian outback that holds onto things, old fence posts, broken windmills, and sometimes, if you look hard enough, the bones of something truly great. This is the story of a Kenworth. Not just any Kenworth, a W900, the kind of truck that built this country's freight network, hauled cattle across the Norlaba, and pushed through red dust roads that barely had names. For years it sat forgotten in a shed somewhere in rural Australia, cobwebs for curtains, rust for paint, time had not been kind. But some machines have a spirit that refuses to die. And this one, this battered, sun-cracked, seized-up old Kenworth, was about to get a second chance at life. Walking up to a neglected truck for the first time is a strange feeling. Part excitement, part dread. You want to see the bones, to know whether there's enough left to save. The cab was a disaster. The windshield had spiderweb from a stone strike years ago, and the Australian sun had done the rest. Inside, the dashboard had literally crumbled. The seat foam had dissolved into nothing. Mice had made the wiring harness their home. Outside wasn't much better. The paint, what was left of it, had oxidized to a powdery grey-orange ghost of whatever color it once wore. Every panel had its story, dents, deep rust blisters, a front bar that had clearly met something solid and lost the argument. Under the hood was a Cummins diesel that hadn't turned over in longer than anyone could remember. The engine bay was a museum of neglect, oil sludge, a cracked hose here, a bird nest there, and that particular smell that old diesel engines carry when they've been left too long. The chassis was the real question mark. You can fix a cab, you can rebuild an engine, but if the frame is twisted or cracked, you're building on sand. An hour under the truck with a torch told a better story. The rails were solid, rusty, yes, but straight and true. This truck had a future. Restorations like this don't begin with tools. They begin with lists, parts, list priority lists, budget reality checks at 2 in the morning. The goal was clear. Take this truck from completely inoperable to fully road registered and working condition. Not a show pony, a real truck, one that earns its living. That meant every system had to be gone through. Engine, gearbox, axles, brakes, electrics, cab structure, paint, the works. There would be no shortcuts, not because there was an unlimited budget, but because a truck that fails on a highway doesn't just cost money. It costs lives. The decision was made to pull everything apart, cab off, engine out, axles down. Only by seeing every surface, every fastener, every seal could you know exactly what you were dealing with. There's a satisfaction in taking something apart that most people never get to experience. Each bolt that breaks free after years of corrosion feels like a small victory. Impact guns whining, penetrating oil soaking into seized threads overnight. The occasional application of heat to persuade something that just doesn't want to move. The cab came off first. Chain hoist lifting it clear of the chassis, swinging it across to wooden trestles where it could be worked on properly. The engine came out next, an engine crane supporting the weight as the Cummins was pulled up and clear of the engine bay. Heavy, awkward, satisfying. Lowered onto an engine stand where every part of it could finally be reached. Axles, gearbox, fuel tanks, exhaust system, wiring, glass, every panel and trim piece, all of it came off systematically, labeled and photographed as it went. By the time disassembly was complete, the workshop looked like a truck had exploded in it, and somewhere in that controlled chaos, the beginning of a restoration. The chassis is the spine of every truck. Get it wrong and nothing else matters. Once stripped bare, the frame went through the blast cabinet, abrasive media stripping every trace of old paint, under seal and surface rust back to clean bare metal. Under that crust of rust, the rails were in better shape than expected, some surface pitting. A couple of areas where the corrosion had gone deeper, but structurally, this frame had plenty of life left. Where repairs were needed, they were made properly, cracks dressed back and rewelded, replacement sections cut to size, come square, tacked, then fully welded with good penetration. New cross members where the old ones were beyond saving. New mounting hardware throughout, grade 8 bolts, hardened washers, nylock nuts, nothing recycled where safety was concerned. Then the primer went on. 2 coats of etch, building protection from day 1. Followed by a high build primer, then the top coat satin black, even coverage, applied with patience and care. The chassis, which had arrived looking like something from a shipwreck, now looked like it had just rolled out of the Kenworth factory. There is no more hopeful moment in a restoration than the first turn of a rib-boat engine. But before you can have that moment, you have to earn it. And earning it with a Cummins diesel that hasn't run in years means going through every single component with fresh eyes and honest measurements. The block went to the engineering shop for a reballed boring bar, machining each cylinder back to a perfect round. The crankshaft journals were ground and polished to a mirror finish. New pistons, rings capped correctly for each bore. New oil pump. New water pump. New thermostat. New timing components. New injectors. A rebuilt turbocharger. New gaskets and seals at every joint. Assembly was slow and deliberate. Every torque figure confirmed in the manual. Every clearance measured before moving on. The engine, lowered back into the freshly restored chassis, looked almost too clean for the workshop around it. Ready to run. Ready to work. A truck's cab is its face. It's what people see on the highway. It's what the driver lives in for 10, 12, sometimes 16 hours at a stretch. The bare cab on its trestles was a project in itself. Every dent had a story, and every one of those dents needed to be persuaded back to where it started. Working from the inside out with a hammer and dolly, the worst of the damage came up gradually. Body filler for the fine work. Longboat blocking to find the low spots, then the spray gun. Kenworth red, a deep rich red that looks almost burgundy in certain light, short in multiple coats, each one building the depth and coverage. Clear coat over the top. Color sanding the clear once cured. Then machine polish, then hand finishing. The kind of shine you can see your reflection in from 10 meters away. New glass. New seals, new chrome trim and badges. The Kenworth badge going back on the hood. That simple chrome badge that means something to everyone in the Australian transport industry. The gearbox came apart on the bench. Every gear, every bearing, every synchronizer ring laid out and inspected. New synchronizer rings throughout. New bearings on every shaft. New seals, new gaskets. Reassembly with the same care that went into the engine. The front axle came apart next, kingpins and bushes replaced, new wheel bearings, new brake drums, new brake shoes and hardware throughout, the rear axle differential rebuilt with new bearings and seals. The axle shafts crack tested, one showed a hairline crack that would have been invisible to the eye but potentially catastrophic under load. A new shaft replaced it without hesitation. The air brake system was rebuilt from scratch. Not because every component was failed, but because air brakes keep trucks and everyone around them safe. New chambers, new valves, new lines throughout. Every circuit pressure tested and confirmed that before the truck was allowed to move under its own power. Wheel rims blasted back to bare metal, inspected carefully, confirmed sound, then primed and painted. New tires were non-negotiable. The originals had flat spotted from sitting so long, and rubber degrades with age regardless of tread depth. The correct size and load rating for the application, fitted, balanced and torqued to specification. Standing back and looking at a restored truck on fresh rubber is one of those moments that reminds you why you do this work. The original wiring harness was beyond saving. A new harness went in circuit by circuit, routed correctly and secured properly. Every earth connection made to clean bare metal, every connector sealed against moisture, the instrument cluster restored, new LED headlights that actually illuminate the road, marker lights, clearance lights indicators, all fitted and tested. Complete electrical sign-off before anyone drove it anywhere. Every circuit tested. No fault codes. There comes a point in every restoration when the individual pieces stop being separate projects and start becoming a truck again. The cab being lowered back onto the chassis is one of those moments. The gearbox mating to the engine, prop chaps connecting gearbox to diff, exhaust system fitted, fuel system connected and leak checked, interior fitted out, new seat, new headliner, new trim panels, the dashboard fully restored and functional. And then, for the first time in longer than anyone could remember, every fluid checked, every system confirmed, the key turned in ignition, air pressure building, gauges coming alive, the starter turning, compression building, diesel igniting, and the Cummins coming back to life with that particular note that truck people recognize immediately. Running rough for the first few seconds, then smoothing, oil pressure climbing, the engine settling into a steady idle that you could feel through the floor of the workshop. It ran. After everything, it ran. The first time you drive a restored truck out of the workshop is a moment you don't forget. Climbing up into the cab, that high step that reminds you every time you're boarding something serious. Reversing slowly out through the workshop doors and suddenly, sunlight. Australian sunlight, which is a different thing entirely to sunlight anywhere else in the world. It hits that deep red paint in the chrome and the freshly restored surfaces, and the truck stops looking like a project and starts looking like exactly what it is. A Kenworth W900, one of the great trucks, back where it belongs. First gear engaged, moving forward slowly at first, checking the steering feel, the brakes, the way the cab sits on its mounts, everything responding correctly. Gears changing cleanly through the box, brakes pulling straight and strong. Hello 1 2 3, my testing, my testing, my testing, my testing, my beta testing, my testing, moving. Trucks are not meant to sit. They are meant to work, and this one was finally working again. Highway speed reached on a clear stretch of Australian road, red dirt shoulder on either side, blue sky above, the engine pulling without effort. The return trip to the workshop was quieter than the outbound one. There's a particular kind of quiet that settles over a person when something they've worked on for months, something they've thought about at 2 in the morning and worried about and invested themselves in, finally works the way it's supposed to. Kenworth trucks have been part of the Australian landscape since the 1950s. They built the snowy scheme. They hauled iron ore across the Pilbara before there were proper roads to haul it on. They caused the Nullarbor in conditions that would destroy lesser equipment. The W900 specifically, that long nose, that presence, that sheer physical statement of a truck, became something more than transport. It became an icon. Part of what Australia is in the minds of people who work with their hands and their machines in wide open spaces. Restoring one of them is not just mechanical work. It's a kind of respect. An acknowledgement that the things built well enough to earn their reputation deserve to keep going, rather than be forgotten in a paddock somewhere. Every hour spent on the chassis, every weld, every bearing, every coat of paint, it all adds up to something that matters. Not just to the people who do this kind of work, but to the broader story of what Australian trucking is and where it came from. This Kenworth left this workshop on 4 fresh tires, with a rebuilt engine and a gearbox that shifts like new and brakes that would stop it on any road in the country. It left with a registration plate and a roadworthy certificate and a future. Somewhere out there, right now, this truck is doing what it was always meant to do. Moving things, covering distance, working. The dust never really settles in the outback. It just moves from one place to another, carried on a wind that doesn't ask permission and doesn't stop for anything. And in the middle of all that moment, all that red earth and bleached sky, there are men and women who spend their lives keeping machines alive. Not because someone told them to, because something in them recognizes that a good machine deserves better than a slow death in a paddock. We'd finished the first Kenworth, sent it back out into the world with fresh rubber and a rebuilt heart, but the calls kept coming. Word was fast in the trucking community, faster than the trucks themselves sometimes. And so began the next chapter, another Kenworth. Different year, different history, same basic story. found in a machinery graveyard 3 hours west of anywhere, sitting between a dead header and the shell of a water tanker that had given up the fight sometime in the 90s. The new truck was a Carbivore, a different beast entirely from the W900. Where the long nose has presence, the Carbivore has purpose. Compact, efficient. The kind of truck that worked city docks and country highways without complaint, that could thread through loading bays a long nose couldn't dream of fitting into. The damage on this one was different too. Less rust, more violence. Someone had rolled it, not catastrophically but enough. The cap was creased along the roofline. The appellees had taken a load they weren't designed for. The passenger door wouldn't close properly because the frame had moved. Structurally, it needed assessment before anything else happened. A road cab is not a cosmetic problem. It's a safety problem, and safety problems come before everything. The chassis rails on this one told a different story to the last truck. One rail had a visible kink, not severe but there. A frame straightening machine would be needed before any restoration work could begin in earnest. The hydraulic arms of the straightening bench doing what brute force and patience can achieve, pulling distorted steel back toward where it started. Measurements taken every step of the way. Laser alignment checking that what felt straight actually was straight. This is not work, you rush. A chassis that looks straight but isn't will cause tire wear, handling problems and eventually failure. The straightening took 2 full days. At the end of those 2 days, the measurement said what the eye couldn't, the frame was true again. From that foundation, everything else became possible. Engine assessment on this one revealed a different problem to the last rebuild. The block itself was sound. The bores measured within tolerance. But the injection pump, the heart of the fuel system on a diesel of this era, had been run without adequate lubrication and had destroyed itself from the inside out. A replacement injection pump was sourced, tested on a flow bench before installation, calibrated to the correct delivery rates for this engine specification. Fuel delivery is everything on a diesel. Get it wrong and you get smoke, poor power, high temperatures and a shortened engine life. Get it right and the engine will run cleanly and strongly for hundreds of thousands of kilometers. The cab repair on a road truck is some of the most demanding work in restoration. You can't simply beat a crushed A-pillar back into shape and hope for the best. The metal has been stressed beyond its elastic limit. It needs to come out, be replaced with new steel, and be welded back in with the correct penetration and the correct geometry. A cab that's been repaired badly is more dangerous than one that hasn't been repaired at all, because the driver trusts it, and it lets them down at the worst possible moment. New A-pillars were fabricated from the correct gauge steel. Roof panel section replaced where the crease had gone too deep to recover. The door frame realigned on the jig before any panel work was attempted, ensuring that when the door closed, it closed against a frame that was actually the right shape. Panel work followed the same discipline as the first truck. Hammer and dolly, patience, body filler used sparingly and correctly to fill surface imperfections, not to hide structural problems, long board blocking until the surface was honest, guide coat, wet sand, repeat as needed. The color on this one was chosen by the owner, a deep forest green that had been the original livery color of the company that first operated the truck back in the 70s. Matching a color that old requires more than just a paint chip. It requires understanding how the paint aged, what the original pigment formulation looked like before 50 years of UV had their way with it, and what the final result needs to look like when it's fresh. Hours of mixing and spraying test panels before the gun went near the actual cab. When the color was right, really right, the spraying began. 3 coats of base coat, each one building the depth. 2 coats of clear. The green came out exactly as the owner had described it from his childhood memories of watching that truck work. That moment when someone sees the color they remember from 40 years ago sitting fresh on metal they thought was lost forever, is one of the reasons this work matters. The gearbox on the Carbivore was a different unit to the previous truck, but the approach was identical. Full strip, every bearing measured, every gear inspected for tooth damage and wear, synchronizers assessed individually. These boxes have been shifted hard throughout its working life. The wear patterns on the synchros told that story clearly, but the gears themselves were in reasonable condition. New bearings throughout, new synchro rings, new seals at every shaft exit, shift rails and forks inspected for wear and replaced where needed. The selector mechanism adjusted on reassembly until every gate was positive and defined. A gearbox that shifts well is one of those things that improves every single trip the truck makes. You don't notice a good gearbox, you definitely notice a bad one. Suspension on this truck needed more attention than the last. The front springs had taken the load of the roll and had set, meaning they'd lost their arch and were sitting lower than designed. Replacement springs were sourced to the correct rate for the application. All the spring hardware renewed, center bolts, U-bolts, shackle pins, bushes. The right height confirmed correct after fitment. Rear suspension received similar attention. IVEX suspension on the rear. A system that provides adjustable ride height and load leveling had an airbag that had cracked from age. New airbag fitted. Height control valve replaced. The system tested through its full range of adjustment and confirmed working correctly throughout. Brakes on this truck had a complication the previous one didn't. Disc brakes on the front axle rather than drums. Disc brake restoration requires different skills. The rotors were measured for thickness and lateral runout. Both were marginal within limits, but only just. The decision was made to replace rather than machine, giving a full service life from fresh components rather than starting with rotors already partway through their life. New pads, new caliper seals, new brake hoses. Brake fluid flushed completely and replaced with fresh fluid of the correct specification. The rear drums and shoes followed the same process as the previous truck measured, assessed, replaced where worn. The complete brake system bled and pressure tested before any movement under power. Electrical work on a carburetor presents its own challenges. The cab tilts forward to access the engine, which means any wiring that passes between the cab and chassis has to be routed through a flexible loom that can handle repeated flexing without chafing or cracking. The original loom in that area had done exactly what old rubber does. It had cracked, allowing moisture into the conductors and causing intermittent faults that would have been maddening to diagnose in the field. New flexible loom sectioned, fabricated and fitted with correct length to allow full cab tilt without tension on the conductors. All connectors in the engine bay replaced with sealed units rated for the environment. The dashboard on this one had survived the roll better than expected. The main structure was intact, though several of the instruments had been damaged by the impact. Individual gauges replaced where faulty. The speedo recalibrated to the correct tire circumference after the new rubber went on. All warning lights tested individually. The interior received new upholstery. The owner had sourced original specification vinyl in a color that matched what the truck would have had when it left the factory. Fitted by a trimmer who understood old trucks and didn't try to modernize something that didn't need modernizing. New headliner, new floor covering. The interior, when finished, looked like it had come from the factory that week, rather than 5 decades ago. Wheels on this truck were a mix, some salvageable, some not. The ones with corrosion in the flange area went to scrap without hesitation. Replacements sourced to match the originals dimensionally. All rims blasted, primed, and painted in a silver that complemented the green cab. New tires selected for the application. A truck that would be used for mixed on and off highway work needed something with a more aggressive tread pattern than a pure highway tire. Correct load rating confirmed for the registered gross vehicle mass. Fitment, balancing, and torque were completed to specification. The first start on this engine was less dramatic than the previous truck. The injection pump had been bench tested before installation, so the fuel system was already known to be delivering correctly. The engine caught within a few seconds of cranking. Oil pressure built quickly, no smoke after the first 30 seconds of warm-up. The sound of a healthy diesel settling into idle is one of the most satisfying sounds in the mechanical world. A deep, even pulse that tells you everything is burning at the right time and the right rate. Cab lowered back onto the chassis after all the mechanical work was complete. The tilt mechanism tested, the cab tilting forward smoothly, held by its prop, giving full access to the engine bay. That enclosed with the correct positive engagement, all external trim fitted, mirrors adjusted, steps and grab handles chrome plated and refitted. The company name going back on the door in the original lettering style, recreated from a photograph the owner had found of the truck in its working days. That photograph, taken in 1973 outside a flour mill in rural New South Wales, showing a young driver standing in front of the truck with his hand on the mirror. That photograph became the target. Get the truck back to looking like it is in that photograph. Not a Quanco's show truck, a working truck, restored to the condition it was in when that photograph was taken. The test drive on this truck was longer than the first one. Caravan trucks have a different driving character to long-nosed trucks. You're sitting over the front axle rather than behind it, which gives a different steering feel and a different sense of the road. The ride was confirmed correct. Steering was positive and accurate. Gears changed exactly as they should through all ratios. The brakes tested progressively, gentle at first, then firmer, confirming even application across all axles and no pull to either side. The engine pulled cleanly from low revs without smoke, confirming the induction pump calibration was correct. On the return journey, the owner sat in the passenger seat for the first time. He'd last ridden in a truck like this as a child, sitting exactly where he was sitting now, watching his father work the gear lever through the ratios. He didn't say much. He didn't need to. Some things speak well enough for themselves. 2 trucks now, 2 complete restorations, 2 machines that came in as rentals and left as working vehicles. The workshop had found its rhythm. The process of assessment, disassembly, rebuild and reassembly becoming more efficient with each project without ever becoming careless. Because careless is how people get hurt. And in this work, the margin between a job done right and a job done wrong is measured in the safety of everyone who shares a road with these trucks. The next truck was already waiting. It had arrived on a towed tray the previous Tuesday. Another Kenworth, another story. Another pile of seized fasteners and corroded surfaces waiting for someone to care enough to fix them. That's how it goes in this work. There's always another truck. There's always another story. And there's always someone willing to put in the hours to bring something back that the world had given up on.